Hello, world. This is Hello Chaos, the podcast on innovation and entrepreneurship, where we talk about the ups and downs, the highlights and low points, and all the struggles of entrepreneurship. I am Jennifer Oladipo, or Jeno.
And I am Jennifer Sutton. Just Jen is, or you're with the Jens.
The Jens.
And today our guest is Judi, Judi, that I love. Judi Henderson with Mannequin Madness out of Oakland, California.
Hi, Judi.
Hello there.
How are you? Thanks for joining.
Great.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So yeah, we're here. We want to have just real, genuine, real stories of the messy and the chaotic lives that we lead as founders and entrepreneurs. So just to kind of open up, what's your entrepreneur journey? How did you get started?
I feel like Judi's company is Mannequin Madness, and I feel like you are right there with us on the chaos.
In the
theme.
chaos
You
theme.
just put it right out front.
Exactly. Well, I like to tell people that I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I did not plan to be an entrepreneur. And when I started 20 years ago, no one was talking about side hustles or a girl boss. And most of the time where I live in the Bay Area, an entrepreneur was a white male in the technology field with venture capital money. So there was really no representation for an entrepreneur, for someone who looked like me, which is why I'm always happy to share my journey with people, because I was an entrepreneur long before I called myself that. So what happened is I was working at a .com at the time, and everybody there was a serial entrepreneur, and they had so much confidence about it. And I I had no exposure, bottom line. So I just started thinking about, what would I do? And nothing really came to mind, but one day I was looking for concert tickets on Craigslist, and I saw a mannequin for sale. Now, how does a mannequin lead into a business, right? I wanted a mannequin as an art project. I was going to put some mosaic tiles and put it in my backyard. Well, when I met the seller, it turned out he ran the only mannequin rental company in town, and he was leaving the state. Now, I had never touched a mannequin. I had never worked in a retail store, and I had never been an entrepreneur. But I thought the Bay Area is such a creative place. There should be a place to rent a mannequin. Fortunately, he was leaving within a week's time, so I had to make a decision instantly, or I would have talked myself out of it.
Oh, wow.
So the idea was I was just going to buy the mannequins and do it as a side hustle. Never thought about being a career. I did it for about 9 months, and then 9/11 happened, and I lost my job at the .com. 9/11 was like another soul-searching time like now.
Yeah.
Lots of chaos, and we're trying to figure out, really, what meaning do I want to have out of my life if we're in such chaotic times? So even though the mannequin business was just kind of getting its sea legs, I decided I didn't want to go for another job, and I was going to do the mannequin business full-time.
Wow.
And you manufacture mannequins, is that right?
No,
or no?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not. Yeah, so I started with 50 mannequins that I bought for him that I rented. And then I found out that department stores would routinely throw mannequins in the trash when they close and remodel. Now, the mannequins are often still in great condition, but the stores just no longer needed them. And I knew there was a secondary market for them. This was long before people were talking about sustainability or circular economy. We're talking about like early 2000s. But I knew there was a market for them. So I started getting mannequins from them, and then I started first selling them locally, and then on eBay. This was before e-commerce. I feel like I'm dating myself here. This is before e-commerce.
That's okay.
Before social media. Okay. But it just goes to show that, like, wow, the internet has made so much more things possible. And I think anybody younger watching this can imagine what it was like before we had Instagram or Facebook or these ways to reach someone cross country.
Right.
So what happened, I went from renting to selling locally to selling nationally and then selling internationally. But all I do is I sell recycled mannequins or I work with drop shippers, and that's how I sell new mannequins. Try to have multiple revenue streams. That's a big one that I'm really a big thing on, So there's renting, there's selling used ones, there's selling new ones. At one time we were doing some mannequin repairs. Then we started renting out our studio for people who wanted to do photo shoots with mannequins.
Right.
Different kind of areas that we started just trying to monetize our space.
So I am so glad to hear that you are international, because the first thing that came to mind when I was looking at your website was when I was in Honduras. This was early 2000s, and it was the first time I had ever seen mannequins with butts. And I was like, I'm saying booties, you know what I mean? And I have pictures because I was like, oh my gosh, because the market there, that's what was, that was the beauty there, was having your, and
the bosoms.
Yeah. Well, just, the butts in particular. It was like,
The
because that's how
badonkadonks?
people were. They weren't badonkadonks. But they were, there were some voluptuous booties on these mannequins. And anyway, I was just like completely blown away because my whole life I'd never seen anything like that. And I was like, oh, well, that is what people want to see here. So I would love to.
I bet they were still Anglo, though. I bet they were still Anglo mannequins. They probably were not dark skinned.
No. There was not that variation. They were like either just like white, like the color white, or if they did have a skin tone, definitely Anglo, definitely not like any brown skin or anything like that.
And mannequins are versions of fantasy and what everybody's idea of fantasy is. So as you said, in Honduras, it was more like a big butt.
Yeah.
But we always tend to think mannequins tend to always be young.
Yeah.
Often tall, usually thin. Even if they have a big butt, they're thin. And 90% of the time, they're also Anglo, or as you said, no color at all. That's a whole different conversation about how mannequins reflect what the current culture thinks of beauty is. Different subject. We'll just stick to the entrepreneurship.
So the business aspect of that is, I'm just curious about, do you have different markets? How are you serving different markets? So there are different needs, and those are based on those beauty standards. But how do you source for different markets? How do you connect into different markets?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because of the cost of shipping, the only international that I can do now is Canada. Occasionally, I'll do something overseas, but usually it's very small, like a mannequin hand or some sort of a part or something like that, just because it's just too expensive. And because I don't manufacture, I don't really have any choice in deciding that. But what I do see is when I work with different department stores, I see their different standards. And sometimes they're more athletic. Say if I work with a Nike store or a Reebok, the athletic mannequins that are in athletic poses have really toned bodies. You really don't see as much of the mannequins with the big butts and the big breast here. That's huge in South America, very huge down there. And occasionally people will ask me if they're selling in Miami, can you get those mannequins from down there? Because that's what the population does. But no, can't do that.
And so you're pretty much, Canada is your international market. And so how are you finding your clients? Because you do have the secondary market thing. So you kind of have to, if I'm understanding correctly, move the product that you have. So you don't determine what your product is, it's what you're able to get your hands on.
Right.
Exactly. Well, certainly having a booming website, and I have revised my websites more times than I can count. Part of the chaos is I thought it was sort of like building a house. When it's built, it's done, and you move in, and that's it. I find that the website has to continually evolve.
Got to paint those walls, Judi. Got to paint those walls, knock down those walls.
Exactly. Avocado green may be hot in one period, and then all of a sudden avocado green looks dated. You have to go to something else, right? It's the same with the website. Now there's pictures are much more important than there was before. So I find I have to be multi-channel. So I have the website. I do have a brick and mortar store. I do still sell on Craigslist. I can't believe some people still rely on Craigslist for finding like bargain items.
That's where I would look for a mannequin.
I was on Etsy until now. Everybody's boycotting Etsy now because they increase their price. Yeah,
that's right.
I'm on part of the Etsy boycott.
Okay.
And then I do Facebook Marketplace, and I'm finding though that Instagram and Facebook also has been a great way of. I create different kind of groups for different kind of audiences, and I find that just making myself visible, people help people find me. I don't tend to do a lot of advertising. I was doing Google ads for a while, but I find a lot of organic traffic happens from me because I do tend to get a lot of publicity because it is an off-the-wall kind of business. And then I have a blog that I've made my blog be very educational because people have questions. And once again, many of my customers, believe it or not, are not retail stores. A lot of people who use mannequins for art projects, for theater productions, for museum exhibitions. Even I was surprised at the different ways that people use a man. Burning Man, Halloween displays. So I use my blog and Pinterest. I have about 52,000 followers on Pinterest.
Wow.
Where I showcase a lot of DIY projects with mannequins. So having part of the chaos is how do you be every place at one time?
That is such a diverse audience.
That's right.
I mean,
you are truly omni-channel. Like you're and very broad segments. Judi, you talked about when you entered the space and you were that accidental entrepreneur, which I love that. I love that phrase. Now, fast forward in your entrepreneur community, your ecosystem there, are you finding a place there? Are you finding that your other people like you? Are are you being fed within a larger entrepreneur network?
Good question, Jennifer. Definitely in terms of women entrepreneurs, absolutely. Minority entrepreneurs, absolutely. The fortunate part about 2020 is all of a sudden there was a lot more emphasis on both women-owned business, minority businesses, and small businesses. So I feel like there's no better time than now. In the 20 years I've been in business, this is the best time to be a woman and a Black woman in business. Mannequins is still a niche in itself. I don't ever expect to find a lot of representation there, okay? But in terms of just the general needs of all small businesses are consistent, whether it's finding staff, finding funding, growing your business, no matter what the product is, that's consistent. Absolutely, there's a lot more support. And I also like to support more what I call senior women, people like myself who are midlife entrepreneurs. Because many times people, they're being forced to retire for whatever reason. And many times, they still have so much more energy and life that they want to do. And instead of being put out to pasture, I really encourage people to follow a passion. I just like mannequins. I didn't know I was going to have a career in it, but I just like mannequins. I like something creative. And so I'm thinking being able to merge those skills together with the power of the internet, I can have a small niche business. And because I can reach a broad audience, I can be successful. Prior to the internet, if I was just only trying to work with local customers, I wouldn't be able to be in business right now. But now that basically the world, granted, if I had a smaller product, I could ship everywhere. So that allows people with a very narrow niche to be able to serve a broad audience. So I'd really encourage more women. And that's why I say that I didn't think I was an entrepreneur, even though I was. And I think many times we as women, we're already doing entrepreneurial stuff. If you are raising a family, you are being an entrepreneur, right? You're having to manage time, manage people,
P&L,
different
input,
people
output,
needs,
inventory,
all these kind of things. Do a little on a lot on a small budget. But I think because it's a woman's work, we don't consider that entrepreneurship, right? It's if a man is doing those same thing and managing resources, all of a sudden it's called something different. You have to think long range if you're a mother, right?
Yeah.
You have to manage
That's
risk.
Right.
And I think if many women started seeing themselves as, these are the same skill sets that you need. It's just you just apply it to a different product. I think more women might be willing to take the plunge.
Yeah.
And not that it's for everybody. I'm clear that, it has been a challenge. Would I do anything else? No. But I know that there was a certain time in my life I could not have done this. I didn't have the confidence in myself, for starters. I think not having a lot of support in terms of my family thought I was crazy. That's part of the reason I called it Mannequin Madness, because I thought most people thought, what the hell are you doing? And you have to really be careful who you have into your circle as a support net system. Because when you're trying to do something new, especially if you're quote unquote a disruptor, there's going to be a lot more naysayers than yay sayers, right?
Yeah.
And so I just think that many times when that little seed is being planted, you have to really nurture that properly. Otherwise, how many other people had a really great idea that got squashed because someone says, oh, you're crazy, or you can't do that, or some other kind of negative thing like that.
That's right, because it does bring you down. You need to be lifted.
Yeah.
Where did you find your network?
A couple of things. First of all, I definitely think it's important to be involved with different entrepreneur groups, like the one that I met you in, Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
Every couple of years, I try to find some entrepreneur incubator or program to be a part of, because, you don't know what you don't know. And then there are times in which, your business is at a different level and you need different kind of support. I'm now looking to buy my building. At first, I was just happy to have mannequins in my backyard. Then it was like leasing a warehouse. Then it was leasing a bigger warehouse. Now I want to buy a building. Different skill sets that you need, so always finding other people. I also have a very strong spiritual practice. I've been chanting. I'm a Buddhist. I've been chanting for over 30 years. I can't imagine trying to do anything without having some strong spiritual core, whatever that is for you. If it's a hug a tree, if it's running in the morning, but you need some other kind of thing to just kind of clear your mind and tap into something deeper inside.
That's right. Because it's hard work, isn't it?
It is. Ironically, a banker told me that one time. I'm thinking a banker, he said he had seen lots of entrepreneurs, and the ones that were most successful had some sort of a spiritual practice. It didn't matter what it was.
Oh, that's
they had
interesting.
some sort of faith. That's what I saw too, especially for a banker to say something like that. But he had noticed the difference that you have some sort of a faith that you can lean on when times get tough, because everyone's going to have a tough time, right? Some people had a better year in 2020. Not everybody was going out of business in 2020. As you know, Jennifer, the program we were in, we had a comrade who was in Bozeman, Montana.
Yeah.
And her business was booming because everybody was going there to escape being in the city.
That's right.
Population was growing. She had a hard time finding employees. Where I was in Oakland, the only thing growing outside of my neighborhood was a homeless population.
Right.
So everybody has something different. But and now she's struggling in a different way, and now my business is growing. So it's always going to be ups and downs. Is what I'm trying to say.
And it's nice to have that, our community to lean on, right?
So if you're, I want to say, what would you call a person who's a serial business learner? You were talking about you tried
a lifelong learner.
Yeah. So how do you assess these programs and know that they're right for you? I kind of feel like you have to know where you are, know yourself, know where you are in your business, and then how do you assess this resource that's in front of you and know that it's worth your time, your money, whatever it is you're investing?
Yeah. And are you looking? Goldman Sachs was national, but were you, have you taken about things in your local area, or do you go? I don't care. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you assess? What's your criteria?
Yeah, what are you
looking for? A little bit about, because first of all, because I find that sometimes each one always have some value. That's the bottom line. I don't think that any of them are a waste of time. Some bring more value than others, but I think anytime you're able to get expertise from someone other than yourself, and you may not need it at that moment. Like at the time, I wasn't thinking about buying my building when I was in Goldman Sachs. 2 years later, I am. I was like, wow, so some of those things those seeds that were planted then, I'm now ready to grow them. I think it's nice to have a mix, because it is great to know what's going on in your local community. But sometimes the local community can kind of almost think one-dimensional, so to speak, because that's what's happening in their community. Like I said, in the Bay Area, people were moving out of the city during COVID. Other places, people were growing. So it's nice to have a perspective of both. I just think there's no such thing as a loss. I think there's a quote that Nelson Mandela said, that sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. It's never a loss. So I think being involved in any of the programs are always going to be worth your time and effort. I try to make sure I can get into them for free, so at least there's the least amount of risk in that regard. I think usually pretty on. I think there's only been one program that I just realized it wasn't for me because the people were too junior.
Yeah.
I like to at least be mid-range, or at least around people who are a couple of levels ahead of me, so I have more to learn. And not that it's not good to give back. I'm sorry.
In what ways are you looking for people to be ahead of you? Is it bigger companies? Is it more time spent? What kinds of things are you looking for in your cohort?
Usually bigger companies, because I still feel I'm a small fry. When I'm out here, I keep on saying in the Bay Area, where everybody's a technology company and they're scaling and they're millions and millions and millions of dollars. I don't even. I got to learn to be within my lane, but how can I also expand the lane that I have? So sometimes learning from other people in other industries can make me realize, I'm never going to be a Facebook kind of thing, but there may be some components from there that I can get to make me bigger in my space. So yes, I'm usually looking for someone who's got more years in the business, more money that they are earning, and a different kind of clientele kind of thing too, because I think you can learn from other people. Like I'm telling you, it's not just retailers who are my customers. That's what I thought when I went into business. Only people who wear clothing or display clothing with my customers. Now I realize there's a whole community. I'm trying to get into the arts and crafts community, which is a huge community.
Yeah.
They love mannequin parts and things like that. So learning from that community is something new for me. So yeah, and like I said, I think there's just so much to learn and collaborate. That's another thing that I've learned.
Yeah.
Is that because I now recycle mannequins all over the country. Let me just put a plug in for that, because people just think I'm working with Barbie dolls. we keep over 1 million pounds of mannequins out of landfills every year.
Wow.
Mannequins are made out of materials that do not biodegrade, like fiberglass, metal, steel, styrofoam. And normally those are just going into the landfill. And I like to say, even people who don't buy a product from me are benefiting from my business, because keeping mannequins out of landfill is great on an environmental level. Okay. I had to offer free services to the retailers so they would call me instead of throwing them in the landfill. They weren't necessarily caring about being environmentally conscious, but they wanted to save money on their waste disposal fees. So first I was just recycling locally. But when I was started working with national chains and they said, look, we've got mannequins in Ohio or North Carolina, can you help us? I started partnering with other mannequin vendors in other parts of the country because it made no sense for me to bring them back to California.
Right.
But instead, I would give the referral to them. They would give me a finder's fee, and they would collect the mannequins and then sell them in their local area. Normally, these would be my direct competitors. But I think sometimes we have to look at collaboration on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
Because I collaborated with them, I can now be a national liquidator. If I was only concerned about my little corner, I wouldn't be as big. But now I can say I'm making a big impact, and I'm a one-stop shop where any national retailer can call me, and I can move the mannequins anywhere across the country.
That's right.
But that required that I collaborate with my competitors. I'm not saying every competitor is someone you want to collaborate with.
Yeah.
But I do think sometimes it's good to kind of, cross party lines, so to speak. Like we would say in a political standpoint, cross party lines for a bigger good.
That's
So
right.
was that a natural inclination, or did you have to learn that lesson some way? Was it easy for you to reach out and to those competitors and try to do business together?
It was, how I want to say it wasn't necessarily natural, but it wasn't hard. What happened, I was working with a chain in California, and they said, can you help us in this other cities? It didn't even occur to me. I hadn't even thought about it. But when they asked me, I said, let me see. Went on the internet, started finding out, there are other used mannequin companies in other places. They typically were always men and people I'd never met. And I just gave them a proposal. Hey, there's got so many mannequins at this store. Do you want them? Here's the price. They said yes. Then it became easier. Money always makes things a little bit easier, right? But it really was a win-win.
Yeah.
It was a win-win. I got a little something. They got a little something. The store got their mannequins removed. It's a win-win.
Win-win-win.
So it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Win-win. Yeah.
Well, I love it because
I got stiffed a few times.
Really?
Oh, what happened?
I got stiffed because
they cut you out?
Sometimes they would pick up they would pick up the mannequins. They didn't send me the money.
Yeah. We've
It happens. You
It
have
happens.
to realize, sometimes it's just cost of doing business. I didn't work with them again, or I started making them put a deposit down,
That's right.
things like that. But realize you just kind of have to like dust yourself off. Nothing's ever going to be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the biggest lesson I learned. And I think many times we as women, we beat ourselves up too much when there's a problem. At first I used to feel like, I'm such a failure because something didn't work out. No, I had a situation that failed. That didn't mean I'm a failure. And I think mindset makes such a big difference. Just like when I really saw myself as an entrepreneur for the first 5 years of my business, I just thought, I've got this fun little hobby that makes a little money. I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur, especially because I was still working out of my home.
Right.
Not that you can't be an entrepreneur at home, but I think not having any representation, having this crazy business, working out of my home, I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Once I moved to a warehouse and started calling myself an entrepreneur, everything started changing. When you see yourself differently, you attract differently.
That's right.
Your intention is different. So I'd say I encourage people to call themselves an entrepreneur. Still take baby steps. I mean, I really think for me, starting off as a side hustle and growing into it helped a lot. It helped me develop my entrepreneurial muscle, so to speak, helped me feel more comfortable with taking risk. I could not have just done this just right off the bat.
Right.
Some people can, but that's why there's all different kinds of ways to come into entrepreneurship, right?
That's right.
I'm totally bootstrapped. I didn't have any outside funding. Who's going to lend me some money when I'm talking about selling mannequins, something I've never done before, and I was over 40? No one's going to lend me money, and it's okay. I'm not saying that, it would have been nice to have, but didn't make me stop.
Yeah. So it's that resiliency, and that you have a lot of tenacity, and just you keep innovating in your space.
Yes. But it helps I liked what I do. It's like, I don't know if I'd have the same sense of satisfaction if I was selling, copiers or printers or something. I just like the artistry of mannequins. So it's fun for me to explore different ways that mannequins can be used. And the fact that there's an environmental aspect of it. I mean, I've always been big on recycling, but that just kind of made the two really go hand in hand. Like, wow, a product I love, and I'm helping the environment too.
Right.
It gives me a lot of excitement and energies that I don't feel like I'm a workaholic, but my friends say that I am. But when you like what you're doing, it doesn't feel like you're workaholic, right?
It's passion to paycheck, right?
It is. And it is true. You can make money with your passion.
That's right. I love one of the, I was looking at one of the articles that were written about you on the mannequin heads you were using to make the headdresses.
Yes.
That you did an event for that. I think it was for charity or it was for a cause.
Good memory.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
But it was like, even that, it's like, how are you, you were kind of amplifying what you do, but in a really creative way, and kind of building a community there. But I love the pieces that people were creating. Those were fantastic.
And that too is another kind of accident. I want to I know they say there's no accident, so to speak, but it was kind of a coincidence. We had a lot of mannequin heads we got from a cosmetology school, and they weren't very interesting looking heads, so it wasn't something we could easily sell. At the same time, we got a bunch of flowers from Macy's because they'd done their flower show. So we started putting flower crowns on the mannequin heads just to decorate our warehouse. People started asking about those, like they wanted to buy them, but the flowers were glued on the mannequin heads. Well, at that time, the whole paint and sip movement was starting to get popular.
What's that?
We thought, well, instead of paint and sip, where people go in and they'll paint and while drinking wine. And
Gotcha.
Those kind of studio paint and sip and things like that is what they're called.
Yeah.
People would just go in and, So we started doing design with wine. They could come in and design a flower crown headdress on these mannequin heads that we had with these flowers that we had. That was our version of trying to get into the paint and sip movement, and allowed us to reach people who didn't want to buy a mannequin, but they wanted to have a flower crown to wear at their wedding or their high tea or have a birthday party.
Right.
So now our warehouse is sort of like a venue for artistic activities like that.
Another innovation. I love it.
Another innovation. Still using mannequin heads. Use mannequin heads. Recycle. Many times we use a lot of recycled items, like we'll use broken pieces of jewelry and things I find at the flea market, like feathers that you can add onto the headdresses. And that's really fun. That's another creative outlet that I didn't plan, but just trying to find multiple revenue streams. If there's anything I want to leave with people, is multiple revenue. I mean, that business obviously... That business dried up, of course, during 2020. We were doing great before 2020. Yeah. Then it completely evaporated, and then it's coming back. Some classes we started doing on Zoom. We make a dress form Christmas tree. You may have seen some of these on Pinterest where you take a dress form, and the bottom of it looks like a regular Christmas tree that you would decorate, and the top part you can dress like a fashion kind of statement. Trust me, it's all over Pinterest.
Wow. So it's like a half a mannequin on top of the tree where you would have an angel? Am I picturing this right?
Or you're making a tree out of a mannequin.
I know.
Just Google dress form Christmas tree.
Okay. Everybody, listeners, dress form Christmas tree. Let us know what you think.
The gems we're completely behind on that.
So, Judi, I'm really curious to know, okay, so multiple revenue streams. How long do you give an idea before you say, okay, this one's not going to work, I'm going to move on to something else? Because it sounds like you're pretty willing to try all kinds of things and continually take risks. Yeah. So how long do you give it before you...
I usually say about a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for us, we realized that repairing mannequins, for example, just wasn't worth it. Too many problems happened. We didn't really have the same skill set, for example. The headdresses, while it took a while to be a success, number one, it didn't require that much energy. Sometimes it means how much effort do you have to put into something before you get a return.
Right.
We already had the product. We already had our facility. It was just a matter of publicity. So that was a little bit different, even though it was a new market for us. But you figure it takes a while for people to kind of wrap their heads around you're doing something different. Mm-hmm. And then you have to realize, when to hold them, when to fold them. Not every idea has always been great. We were doing dog photography for a while because we have the photo studio. We have great props. Everybody was adopting dogs during 2020. We thought, everyone wanted to make their dog an Instagram star. It just took more effort. Dogs are different than mannequins. Okay?
Slightly, just a little.
We'll stick with our mannequin.
Slightly different.
Exactly. So you gotta, be willing to have fun with it.
So wait, one more question on that. So do you set a goal, like, okay, you're gonna give it a year. Do you set like some kind of a goal for how much return you want to get on that? Or is it just like, we're gonna try this out and see what happens?
If we make money, we make money.
We're like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not strategic like that, Jennifer. You seem like you're kind of you just want to get the strategic one. You got to plan it out.
A little bit.
That's good, but I'm just saying there's different kind of ways to do a business. I would never start if I had to be strategic. I jump in, and then I have strategic people around me who help me figure it out.
There you go.
There you go.
So back to that kind of diversity component that we talk about in corporate America. For small business, you need diversity too. You need people on your team who are opposite than you, not necessarily age or race race or sexual orientation. I'm talking that too, but I'm talking about thought processes.
Yeah.
I am the wild one on my team. I had people on my team who were like you, J.O. Like, wait a minute, how are we going to make this happen? Have you thought about this? What if that happens? Oh, if the sky falls in, then what do we do? There's my worst case scenario.
How are you
people.
reading me that fast?
I can tell. By your line of questioning, I can tell. I've got that on my team. And I think it's important. Now, sometimes I'm going to listen to you and say, Jennifer, you're absolutely right. Other times I'm like, girlfriend, you're going to have to roll with me on this one. Put your thoughts and doubts aside and figure out a way to make this happen.
That's right. That's
There
right.
you go. That's your
Thank you for sharing.
CEO.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you for sharing. Yeah.
I've been
But
there.
it is
Yeah, I was
good
gonna say we got a little of that going on.
Yeah. Like,
yeah. But I would spin out of control if I didn't have a Jennifer to kind of reel me back in a little
That's
bit.
right.
And the Jennifers of the world would probably not move forward as fast if they didn't have another one on their team saying, let's do this.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's
So,
the
I
that's
think
the
even
Gen
as
O's
small
of
as
the
your
world,
team
to
is.
clarify.
That's
not
right.
the Gen S's.
Okay, yeah. And my
The-
team is small.
the gens.
The Gen S's
Yeah.
move fast.
Yeah, my team is small. I only have 3 employees and I have 8 independent contractors. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a big team.
Mm-hmm.
But you really just need to have those people in place who can really, I guess, complement your weaknesses
Yeah.
and bring in different points. Because I wish I could be more strategic, but I don't think like that, Jennifer and Jennifer J.O. But people like me who are thinking about these different kind of creative ideas, that's where my skill set is. Then I need someone else here to help make those things happen.
That's right.
And, sometimes I get into some things that I probably would have saved some money. If I thought
do I
about it a
hear an
little bit
oh
more.
shit moment live? Just
Yeah.
this just in an oh shit
Yes.
moment.
Yeah.
That's
Tell us
Yeah.
about it, Judy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Judy,
there
what,
are some of those.
what's been your biggest oh shit moment of I shouldn't have, or that was a big one. Can you recall
I'm
one?
trying to think, because there's nothing that feels like anything that's really devastating. I think something just recently that happened is we were asked to be on Pinterest TV. Pinterest has their version of sort of like TikTok creators.
Oh.
And they sent over all these details about what we needed to do for the production, which I didn't read in the same level of detail that I should have. Okay, let's just say that. So, but of course, the person on my team who was doing it was like, you, J.O., and they kept asking me all these questions, which kind of annoyed me. I'm like, let's just roll with it. It'll be okay. So in the process of doing it, what should have been a 60-minute show, we had about 30 minutes worth of material. So had I paid more attention, it would have been less stressful, put it that way.
So-
We found a way, because I'm good at improvising, we found a way to stretch out what we have by moving a little slower during the presentation, by kind of doing that to extend it out a little bit. Because we could talk, and then people couldn't hear us talking. So
Okay.
she and I were like, oh, shit, what do we do next? Let's grab this over there. The good news, we had a few things together. So that was kind of an oh, shit. And then also the clarity of our screen wasn't as clear because we should have used a different camera. But here's the good news, J.O. We got so many views.
Yeah, I'm
Despite
sure
our
you did.
production not being, we got tons of views. They were very impressed with our metrics that I know they're going to ask us back.
Well,
And
good.
this time I'll be more prepared. So it's kind of
Excellent.
like a mix of the two. It would have been a lot smoother if I had paid more attention to the details. Put it that way. But despite that, our intention was to deliver a good show, and we did.
And you did.
So,
Well, so
yeah.
if you
I think the only other, I'm sorry,
Oh,
one
no,
more
no.
ocean
ahead.
no,
moment.
you do an oh shit. I love them.
American Apparel went out of business.
Yeah.
And we got 3 30-foot trucks full of mannequins.
Oh,
The truck was full. We had no place to put them. But I said, I'm going to say yes to these mannequins, because in a liquidation game, if you say no, then they're just gone. I can't come back next week and say, oh, we changed our mind, let's reorder them.
Mm-hmm.
So I had them shipped from London. I paid for the shipping cost to bring them to Los Angeles. We had no room to put them. Consequently, about 2 months later, we moved into a bigger warehouse.
Oh, well,
We
there
had
you
to move
go.
to a big- I mean, I could have rented a storage facility, but by the time that was going to cost me, I was like, let's just move to a bigger place.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when my staff saw all the mannequins arriving, they kept giving me that look like, what are you doing? Because I don't have a good spatial sense. I just like, let's just get the mannequins and we can stack them up. And pretty soon it was like one truckload had already filled up our place, and we had 2 more trucks on the way. But it propelled me to another area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of think it really wasn't it was an oh shit at the moment that we made into a oh wow. Oh shit to oh wow.
We gotta add that to the
we gotta
list.
add that.
We've got oh shit.
So the next question
moments.
is, Ju, when you look back at your 20-year span, what's been the best aha moment?
Saying yes to my dream.
Mm.
Saying yes to it. And quite frankly, if 9/11 hadn't happened, I probably would have still been doing it on the side because I still would have been too afraid to take the risk. I think I was just too afraid, that's for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So sometimes these pushes can be good. Just like when we had too much merchandise at one point, we had to move out of our location. I had stayed here much longer at my home at the time. We had mannequins in the backyard, in the garage, in the basement, under tents. I was afraid to get a warehouse.
What did your neighbors say about that?
Curious. There's that. Fortunately, I live in a mixed-use neighborhood. It's kind of a little residential commercial. But everyone knew me on the street as the crazy mannequin lady. They knew that. So sometimes there'd be styrofoam peanuts, floating down the street, or they see the trucks coming up with these big old coffin boxes being delivered in our driveway. We were forced to move because we got a ton of mannequins from Nike and we had no space for them, and we were cited by the city because we had too much inventory on our place. And I thought, oh shit.
Oh shit. That's an oh shit.
Yeah, that was an oh shit move. And they gave me 30 days to move, which was not easy, but we were able to stick to 60 days. So I moved into my first warehouse because of that. Wow. So I think back to so many times, I wish that I had been more proactive as opposed to waiting until I was pushed. 9/11 pushed me. Having the inventory here at my house pushed me. Getting inventory at a bigger place and didn't have room for it, that pushed me. So, I guess we all respond to things differently. I do okay if I'm pushed. I seem to be able to then find a way.
Yeah.
But I wish I had more confidence to say yes versus waiting until I'm back up against the wall. And maybe, everyone's different. Maybe that's what gets my adrenaline going and I can then start moving. Because you have to really be creative when you're like this, you have to really be creative kind of thing. I can't seem to be as creative when I'm just kind of sitting back here, sipping on something to create that kind of creativity.
For our audience members who can't see, she just sort of put two hands on her throat and sort of choked herself. And that's not it's not an opportunity for creativity. Not the right environment.
But you do what you can, right?
Yeah.
You deal with the hands that you're dealt with.
Well, and I think
but just the fact that I said yes when most people were thinking this is crazy.
That's probably
my biggest thing I'm glad. Especially, I'm going to be 65 next month, and I know that if I was in a traditional corporate job, I'd be pushed to the wayside. And the fact that now there's so many new things that I'm learning. Some things I enjoy, like learning TikTok. Other things I don't enjoy, like becoming a warehouse manager. But the idea when you're a small business, you get to do a whole lot of different hats.
Yeah.
When you're in a corporate gig, you get hired for whatever your one specialty is. And sometimes you maybe get a few other things, but you're pretty much limited to that role. And I really feel because I have multiple roles, all that I enjoy doing. I'm also an Airbnb host. Once you start taking one risk, it
Please
makes
say
it
the
easier
mannequins
to take
are
risks.
in there. I
have a few. It's not a whole mannequin thing. I'd have a few little decorative ones or a picture of one. But I got comfortable in one area that I could then translate it to other areas. What I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And I just think when I see some of my other friends in my age group who are counting the days to retirement, either excited to retire or worried about retirement. I don't even think about retirement right now. I've got too many other new creative ideas that I'm wanting to do.
That's right.
But it all started with back when I said yes to the mannequins, even though I had no idea what I was getting into. I was not strategic like you, Jay. I just said mannequins.
On my best days. On my best days. That's me.
But I'll tell you, you do kind of bring up a good point of just the agility and the flexibility of that mindset. You have to have that. And some days you're the janitor and other days you are the CEO. We wear, multiple hats and
absolutely.
I call it, I was just giving you my little story, when I bought our first building and I'm out there sweeping the front area. I was weeding and we were on a busy street and people would drive by and honk at me. And I was like, I'm living the dream. I'm living the dream. They're like, what are you doing out there? I'm weeding our landscape because we're in a, in a business district and our front area, and they're like, don't you have people for that? I was like, yeah, me. I was like,
I am the
me, myself, and I.
Yeah. But there's some things you don't understand until you're in it. It's almost like you're trying to explain someone how to swim. When you're on the outside watching someone swim, it seems like, oh, there's so much to remember. You got to turn your head and this and that, whatever, and breathe, da da da. There's only so much you can learn until you're actually in the water, and that's what I think entrepreneurship is. There's a lot of things that people can suggest and advise, but it's only once you're in it can you really fully experience. And everyone will just handle things differently, and I think it's okay. I'm just so glad you're giving people an audience to show the range. There's lots of opportunities, and particularly as people of color, Jennifer, I think so many times we've been limited to only sell products to our individual audience. That's why you find many times African American women selling hair and beauty products, because we were limited to what we can apply. But I'm thinking now we can sell products that are more broad stream and mainstream. I mean, a very small percentage of my customer base is African Americans. I sell to every demographic out there because everybody likes the human form in some way, whether they're using it for a business or personal use. So being in the Bay Area where we've got everybody in there, I've seen every income bracket, every gender persuasion, because gender is like a spectrum nowadays, especially out there where I live, and I see, like I said, every income group, every nationality, and I'm just so grateful that I have the opportunity to serve so many different types of people.
Yeah, that's a good point. That of the historical, you're this kind of person, so you sell in this kind of category. That's one of the things that I've really enjoyed seeing, just kind of really just blown up.
Right.
I would say that seems fairly recent too. That it's just sort of
totally.
Seeing all kinds of people moving into all kinds of spaces.
That's right. That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the internet allows you to be transparent. I mean, one of our first customers was Prada. They called us from Milan in Italy.
Oh, wow.
We were still selling mannequins out of our backyard. Our website made us look huge, but they had no idea we were in Oakland, California with mannequins in our backyard. But we had gotten some mannequins from a Ralph Lauren store. They just wanted the product. They didn't care where they had to go to find it. And the internet makes it possible so you can be, like I said, transparent. They didn't know my age, my sex, where I was even located. For the longest, I really buried the fact that I was an African-American business owner because I did not want that to be a barrier for someone buying, especially when e-commerce was pretty new. It really has been only the past 2 years where people are more proactive and wanting to support Black businesses that you know that I'm there. It's not like I'm on the front page or anything like that, but I like the idea that I could conceal my identity with a website.
But you don't feel like you need to anymore.
No, I don't just feel like I have to advertise it either. I'm kind of in that kind of in-between place. It's kind of like,
you just are who you are.
So it's not, isn't that a beautiful feeling?
Yeah.
That's a beautiful feeling.
That is.
Yeah.
And so, that's part of the podcast and the media company that we're starting is celebrating and normalizing. Jen O was like, how do we start normalizing? These are the faces in your community.
I love that.
Across the nation of who is an entrepreneur and who is a founder, because this is it. We're the average.
Yes.
And I mean, people see
Absolutely.
People see it, but it's like, but then when it comes to who gets the megaphone, who gets the microphone, who gets the funding,
Yes.
that's when it starts.
Who gets the funding?
Yeah, because anyone who's looking around their community can see that.
Right.
But then when it starts to kind of get to this certain level of, okay, when the resources and the attention start coming, then that's when the stratification.
Well, and a lot of times it's only those rare unicorns too.
Yeah.
That are, that's the 1%. That's not the 99% of the faces.
Exactly.
So,
and I love that you guys are giving a voice to show the spectrum, because first it's like just even recognizing that we're here. And then you're right, the next level is how do we then get the funding and the resources and the opportunities? Can you imagine if many of us started having some of those same access to what we could do? Right. If we'd be able to do so much with just such a little bit, what would be happening if they trusted us to be able to have more?
That's right. That's right. I love it. We're
Well,
going to do it. We're going to change the world.
It would be hard not to trust you, Judi. I feel like you could take whatever and make it work, make it fly. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, I love
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And viewers and listeners, I hope you enjoyed this. We sure did. That was Judi Henderson with Mannequin Madness. And, but yeah, come listen to our podcast. It's Hello Chaos Podcast. You can find us on all podcast platforms, everywhere. You will also be able to find it in our digital zines that are the local. We're going out to cities near you that will be distributed, and you can watch the video through that distribution. But come and listen, watch, subscribe. Share, comment,
rate,
email us,
hello,
and let us know, what stories you'd like to hear.
Yeah.
Because we want to amplify these voices.
Yeah, let us know if you got any more Judys out there in your neighborhood that we need to check out. Look over the yard, look at the backyard, see what's going on. Let us know.
That's right. Yeah, everyone peek over the fence of their neighbor and go, what is happening over there?
What are they doing?
We love it.
Judi.
Thank you.
Love it.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Okay.